I think sometimes people are like, oh, in order to do data science, I have to be a data scientist. And it's like, well, you don't have to be a mathematician to do math. It's the same way. You can start doing data science as an engineer, as an accountant. Like you don't necessarily need the title at all to do data science. And I think you're right. People miss that.
Ken's Nearest Neighbors is powered by Z by HP, HP's high compute, workstation grade line of products and solutions. Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing Avery Smith. Avery is on a mission to help working professionals break into data science. He also is completely obsessed with data. He has a dashboard to track his iPhone app usage, and he even analyzes his dog's Fitbit data. Avery is the creator of Data Career Jumpstart and the founder of Snow Data Science. In this episode, we learn about how Avery first fell in love with data science, the risk-reward trade-off that he analyzed when he considered leaving a good corporate job to start his own consulting company, and about how you can use your brand to start a company or land the job of your dreams. I hope you enjoy the episode. I know I enjoyed our conversation. Avery, thank you so much for coming on the Ken's Nearest Neighbors podcast. We actually met in kind of a funny turn of fate where you sent me over an invite to Clubhouse pretty early on, and we got acquainted then. And you know, looking back, I'm like, that's such an awesome way to like make a connection with someone. It's just like, hey, I have this value that I'm providing to be part of this group. Like, why don't you do it without asking for anything in return, just because you had it and that availability. And so, like early on, first 15 seconds of this talk, we're already getting a lesson and some wisdom for you. So again, thank you for coming in.
Hey, thanks for having me. Too bad Clubhouse is kind of dead now. I mean, didn't work out super well, did it?
Yeah, I think it depends on what kind of what niches you're working in. And something that I've realized related to content is that the things that have been around tend to stay around, even if it's something like Facebook, where the demographic has changed, but it's still definitely around. Obviously, I cater to YouTube because, you know, aside from being a video platform, it's also the second biggest search engine on the internet. And so, you know, it's awesome to get into some of these things early, and it's fun to be able to interact, but it's different when you're thinking about how to grow a business or how to make the maximum impact or how to, you know, connect with as many people as possible on that front.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. It'll stick around somehow and transform and change. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what that journey looks like. So I'd love to get for the listeners, for them to understand a little bit more about you. And the first place that I usually start on this podcast is with where you first got interested with data, or where you first realized that data was a career that you wanted to pursue.
Yeah. So I have kind of an interesting story. When I started college, I knew I really liked math and I knew I really liked chemistry. And so I chose to be a chemical engineer. That was my major. But my dad actually was like, hey, there's this thing called machine learning. You should learn about it. And he'd always send me all these articles and like these YouTube videos. But I was just like a college student. And as a college student, you just don't listen to your dad. That's like what you're supposed to do, is whatever your dad says is uncool. And so just don't pay attention to it. So I kind of just ignored him. And I went the chemical engineering route. I took a couple programming classes, really liked the programming classes. And eventually I found myself at a little company called VaporSense that does chemical sensors. And they had a data scientist on staff. And so that was my first time actually meeting a data scientist. I got to talk to him and understand a little bit what he did, but I was just in the lab. I didn't really get to do any of the data science parts, but that's kind of my first exposure into data science.
That's awesome. And so from that, what was your impression? You know, was it like, oh, wow, immediately this is so cool, my dad was right all along? Or was it like, oh, I don't really know what this guy's doing, it seems interesting, I'm going to ask a little bit more, I'm going to maybe do a little bit more of this work? What does that process look like?
Well, from the little programming classes I'd taken maybe 2 programming classes. This is probably my sophomore year. I've taken 2 programming classes. I just know I love programming. I'm like, wow, programming's super cool. I'm really into programming. But at the same time, like I think about changing my major to CS, and I look at the classes And there's kind of like this, like, I don't remember the term, but like, it's this class that's really hard that like basically discourages you from taking the program. And you have to build Excel basically from scratch. And I'm like, that's stupid. Like, why do I want to build Excel from scratch? Like, I don't want to build pointless things as a programmer. I want to build cool things as a programmer. And so I think that's kind of where I saw data. I was like, oh, this is like applied programming, and you actually provide value from it. And that's really cool. And I think I didn't realize how important it was until that data scientist actually quit. So we didn't have we tried to find a new data scientist for like 6 months, and we couldn't find anyone. They were just expensive. They were hard to find. And we just kept piling up all this data, and like no one had the power to do any sort of analysis with it. And that's like, our whole company was based around being able to tell what chemicals is in the air and how much of that chemical is present. And when you didn't have the data scientist there to do it, you really didn't have a product. And I was like, oh crap, this stuff's really important apparently.
Awesome. And so is that how you started to transition into the data science career? I'd love to hear kind of the arc of your career journey starting from there.
Yeah, that's exactly how is this data scientist quit, and I was in the lab testing the chemicals. So it was actually a pretty cool job. I got to touch like a bunch of drugs and a bunch of explosives and like test them on the chemicals or our sensors, because that's kind of the application of our sensors. And so that was pretty cool, but I wasn't the best at it. And I was kind of getting bored and a little bit frustrated. And so one day, especially because the data scientist wasn't there, I was just like making all of this data with no analysis. And so one day I was like, all right, you know what? I've taken a couple programming classes. I've taken a stats class. How hard can it be? I'm just going to try to figure this out on my own. And without my boss's permission, I started to write a program in MATLAB. And that would basically take the data that I was producing and do some basic data analysis. It was mostly like automation. It was basically like, at like the 30th minute, take the standard deviation of the last 2 minutes and take the max of the next minute and give me a signal to noise ratio. And it was super basic, but I wrote it in MATLAB. I didn't tell my boss. And then when I was done, I like tested it out, made sure it worked. And I showed my boss and I was like, hey, I basically made this program that takes the analysis and does what used to take me like an hour in 10 seconds. Is this useful? And he was like, oh, yeah, this is pretty useful. This is pretty cool. Thanks for making this. And I was like, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Can I do more of this? And he was like, okay, sure. And so my time, as I was at the time, I was kind of like a lab intern or an engineering intern. And my time kind of shifted from half being in the lab to half writing these programs that would save us time in the analysis at our company. And eventually it went 60-40, and then it went 70-30, and then 80-20. And then eventually I was just doing programming and data analysis for this company. And we actually didn't even end up hiring anyone for a really long time. I just kind of became the new data scientist. And I wasn't that good at it, as I started, but every day I got a little bit better. And I ended up providing a lot of value for this company. And that's how I got started, was this crappy little program I wrote kind of on the side in MATLAB.
Yeah, well, I think at a high level, I always describe data scientists as being problem solvers, and the tools that they use or whatever it is, MATLAB, Python, R, and the problems that we're facing are ones that are relevant for data in the domain. And to me, you did exactly what a data scientist would do in that situation. Is you looked and assessed what could save you time, you looked and assessed what the best opportunities were in that space, and you took action. And I think a lot of people don't realize that there are often opportunities in your current job to apply some analytics, to use programming to automate some of your tasks, to make your life easier. And if there are other people in your role, if there are other people doing similar things, something that makes your life easier might also make someone else's life easier. And as long as your bosses aren't telling you no, it doesn't hurt to tinker around and like create products that are valuable. Often the things that are created under the radar, whether it's a pricing model or whether it's something else, or whether it's an analysis to speed up your workflow, those are things that people end up adopting because they're useful, not because it was like created from or like by a call from the higher ups. And I think that that's a really important thing to understand, is that if you're creating value for someone, even if it's your coworkers, that's inherently useful. And that can help you to pivot a career. That can help you to get a promotion. That can help you to transition from a data analyst or a chemical engineer to a data scientist. But a lot of the times we're really focused on the more traditional paths to do these things. And what I've learned from so many podcast interviews is that the traditional path is not like the most common path. And if you're looking at how many data scientists have gotten into data science from a purely traditional path, which I don't even know what that would be, maybe like computer science and statistics, whatever it is, like the amount that have gone from a non-traditional path, it outnumbers them 10 to 1, which I think is pretty incredible to think about.
Yeah, it is crazy. Like you look at all these people that, are talking about data science on LinkedIn or YouTube. And, most of them don't have that undergrad you'd really, expect them to have. And you're totally right that it's really these like side projects that end up getting a lot of people, giving them a taste and then getting them addicted, and then just continuing the side projects that ends up, completing the path into a data scientist. And I actually kind of hate the term data scientist because I think sometimes people are like, oh, in order to do data science, I have to be a data scientist. And it's like, well, you don't have to be a mathematician to do math. It's the same way. You can start doing data science as an engineer, as an accountant. Like you don't necessarily need the title at all to do data science. And I think you're right. People miss that.
I love that high level like concept, right? Is that I've always viewed it like this. Data science to me is a tool. Regardless of what profession I am, like what my background is, that tool can be useful to me in some way. I mean, before I was like called a data scientist, I mean, I don't even know what I'm called now, but I was using data science techniques. I was using linear regression. I was using some of these things to try and understand the sports that I was interested in better. Was I a data scientist then? Absolutely not. Was I using data science techniques to help me understand that domain? 100% absolutely. So that like naming convention should never be a barrier for us to do fun things. I mean, I talked on the podcast a couple of weeks ago with a 16-year-old kid who's using advanced computer vision, all these types of crazy things, and doing very public projects. And he doesn't think he's a data scientist. He's like, yeah, I'm a high schooler. I do these projects for fun, and it's fun for the community and whatever it is. But the projects are very high level. They're really good. And they're public facing, and he doesn't, it's not about what he's called, it's about what he does. And I think that is one benefit of this kind of software and data domain is over time, I expect it's going to trend more to what you do rather than what you're called or what school you went to and whatever it might be. Because coming from consulting, it was the opposite. It's like, if you didn't go to a target school, you're not going to get an interview at my company. If you didn't do XYZ, like the political side of things really took precedence. And one of the reasons why I didn't love it, and I ended up getting out. But yeah,
you're so right. It's and it's awesome. It's like democratizing, the ability to improve your life. And if you are able to prove that you can do the things that you say you can via a project, like you said, a public facing project. I'm really big on portfolios, right? Like having an online portfolio and showing employers, showing, companies, hey, this is what I can do. These are my skills. You don't believe me? Like check out these past projects I've done. That can really change your life. I mean, I think that's so much better than a one-page resume. Like you can either have a one-page resume or you could have a website with tons of hyperlinks, tons of pictures, tons of videos, tons of words explaining your work. And as an employer now, like, what do I prefer? Like, would I rather learn from someone's website or from someone's one-page PDF? And the answer every time is, well, probably a little bit of both, but I much rather prefer the website if I have to choose one. So yeah, doing projects that are public facing, building in public is such an important thing that can really change your life.
Yeah, well, I want to add a little nuance to your point there, and feel free to disagree with me here. I really believe that you need to be creating things that match the medium that you're communicating on. So if you're sending in like applying for a job and they are asking for a resume, yes, you put a resume, right? But if you're reaching out to someone, like cold emailing them, it might make sense to send your portfolio website or just one specific project that they might find really interesting. And it's finding exactly, okay, I have a lot of content. I've made it interesting. I've applied good elements of storytelling. I have a lot of these things. What is the best like piece of content to send this person on this specific medium. Creating that match in my mind is what creates that next level jump to like increasing the probability that someone gets back to you, that someone either like tells you to apply for a job or wants to communicate more or even be friends with you. It's all about the messaging. And you're so right. Like if you do have a website that is well built out, it shows your work rather than tells your work. That gives you so many more tools to pick apart to be able to send as independent messages across a ton of different platforms and channels. And you know, I think you're right, but there always is that a little nuance I wanted to follow up with.
Yeah, that's a great point. Obviously, you don't want to just like a hammer for everything you see, you know, and tailoring, like you said, tailoring your projects to what industry or what job you're interested in. That's so powerful. When people like ask me what project that they should do, I always encourage them to say, okay, pick a company, think about what keeps them up at night. You know, what are their issues, and then try to solve that issue. And of course, you're probably not going to solve it perfectly, but even the process of just going through that whole, okay, this is what this company's issues are. This is how data could support it. This is like a solution I could come up with, is such a good exercise for you just to like understand that company's ins and outs. And also it shows that you actually care. You know, it shows that like, hey, I have initiative. I can solve problems. And as, you know, someone who's hiring, that's very valuable. You know, that's something you want to see in an interview process. So yeah, definitely want to tailor your stuff. I don't know if you saw this the other day. This kind of went viral on LinkedIn. There's some college student, and I'm forgetting your name, college student, so I'm so sorry. But she was applying. She doesn't even have that great of a GPA. I think she has like a 3.0 GPA, which is fine, right? But it's not like amazing. And she wanted to work for Spotify, and she ended up landing this job at Spotify. Spoiler alert. But she submitted her resume and designed it completely to look exactly like the Spotify UI. Like it looks like when you're looking at your resume, you feel like you're looking at Spotify. And that was a great example of, you know, tailoring your resume to a job you want. And it worked out for her.
That's incredible. You know, something one of my friends, Jeff Lee, I'd learned from him during the interview process was this idea of the briefcase method, which is something that you know, borderline just articulated with the designing a project for a specific company. And that's when you go in and you interview, you bring just a one pager of essentially the things that you described. So you outline the project, you scope it, you talk about the requirements and the issues and the types of model you would use. And you essentially pitch a company a project that you had developed based on thinking about the problems that they might have. So you're coming in very proactively. They're not just asking you what types of problem, you know, how to solve this problem, which is a very common approach in a behavioral or more technical interview, is like, you know, we're doing this. How would you go about solving it? What methodology would you use? But you're telling them that I went this step further. I thought about the problems you might have, and I went through and I like built this out. It might be completely off base. It might be wrong, but that extra effort and to show that you're thinking about the business need and you're thinking about the business is something that people constantly overlook in the process, right? If you apply to 100 companies, like what stands out between one company and another at that point, right? There's so much in your brain, there's so much backlog. But if you're able to really focus on a couple and tailor that entire experience, not just the resume, the entire interview process, your projects, the whole thing, your odds go up like exponentially, like majorly exponentially.
Oh yeah. And it makes you stand out, right?
Yeah. And that's what we want to do. I think so many people are scared that they'll stand out in a negative way. Oh, I didn't come from this major. And I'm like, well, you know, you have a really unique major that I haven't seen in this field. They're at least going to look at your resume, right? They're like, if they keep seeing the same thing, you're not differentiated. But, you know, I talked to Hyun Park, whose episode's going to come out soon. Hyun Park. And he came from a women and gender studies background.
Oh, wow.
And to me, it's like, well, you know, that's fascinating. What could he take from that domain and apply to this data field? How is that perspective from that background going to be different and to shape his views and thoughts? And from an employment perspective, assuming the other criteria are met, that's something that is a benefit because they're different. We don't want a bunch of carbon copy robots in our business. I don't know. I think people just really overlook the nuance associated with these things.
Totally.
Awesome. So shifting gears a little bit from that position, I'd love to hear about how the rest of your data career unfolded. You know, how you got your next job, what the next step of that process has looked like.
Yeah. So while I was, a pseudo data scientist at this small little company, I would never have been able to do that at a big company. It only had about 15 people. And that's one of the reasons why, I was able to, after I demonstrated value, I was able to kind of make the jump to that full-time data position. I ended up landing an internship with ExxonMobil, big oil major in Houston, Texas, and in their research and development arm. So working on problems in their optimization group, trying to help make more efficient oil and cheaper oil and make more money doing it, right? Of course. Spent a summer with them, built a really cool project that I was really proud of that, they thought was going to save them a bunch of money. Got a return offer and started with ExxonMobil full-time after I graduated. So I spent about a year and a half in this optimization group working on things like linear models, automation of analysis, lots of linear modeling, lots of automation in Python. And then I spent about 6 months in the actual data science group working on supply chain problems, trying to automate and forecast things that could make Exxon's life easier and save the company money. And then after 6 months in that group, so after 2 years at ExxonMobil, I ended up quitting my job and starting my own little analytics firm, which I've been doing for almost 8 months now. So it's been an awesome journey. I guess sprinkled in there, I should also mention at Exxon, while I was at Exxon, I ended up I just graduated this week actually, but I started a master's in data analytics online from Georgia Tech. And I also started freelancing in my free time. So I was working, freelancing, and doing the master's kind of all on the side. It was a fun time in the life of Avery. And now it's all kind of culminate or come to here where now I'm running my business and I just graduated. So it's been good.
Congratulations. I don't know if I could have done that same thing. So I did my master's in computer science full-time while I was working, and I literally had no time to do anything else, no freelancing, anything. So I'm very, very impressed with your work ethic and your ability to focus through those things. Something I'm interested in, as you worked for a company essentially where you were the only data person, right? You transitioned in that role, moving into a more formalized, structured company like ExxonMobil, and then now into your own self-driven work. What have those transitions been like? Has it been easy, or were there some things you were like, oh my goodness, this is so different from how I did it before?
That's an interesting question. Working at a small company, I had a big say. There's only 15 different voices in the room, and so I could often, share my opinion and actually, do things that I felt made a difference. At Exxon, I struggled a lot more with that. Obviously, a lot bigger company, 70,000 people, worldwide company, and I'm just a little cog in the system. So I really struggled with like the culture, just I just feel like I didn't have as much say. Obviously, it's a bigger company. There's lots of layers of bureaucracy. So I really struggled with that dynamic. But it was fun to also learn from other people. There's some really smart people at Exxon that I got to learn from and interact with and work with. So that was very fun. I got to learn a lot in that situation because at VaporSense, I still got to learn, but I didn't learn that much about data because not that many people, no one really knew about data. So I got to learn a little bit more at Exxon, but I didn't feel like my work was as meaningful, to be honest. And now transitioning back to, a one-man company or one man plus some other people every once in a while. I'm back to, now it's like whatever I say goes. I mean, there's no one there to argue with me other than the client. And that's a lot of responsibility. To be honest, that's scary because I'm really testing my knowledge sometimes. I'll be honest, I've taken projects sometimes where I literally don't know that much about it, but I'm like, I can figure it out as I go. So that's scary sometimes. There's no safety net necessarily in the entrepreneur thing. Like if I take a project and I don't know how to do it, I either need to not do it or pay someone else to do it, versus like at Exxon, I could try to network around and try to find some experts in that space. So it's definitely, all three have been different dynamics, and I've learned a lot from all three of them.
That's awesome. And so I would love to get a little bit more perspective into your shift towards your own business. I know some people gave you quite a bit of, or they didn't quite understand your decision-making process, going from, frankly, a well-paying job with a lot of stability to working for yourself. I mean, obviously, I have some entrepreneurial thoughts or kind of ideas running around in my head constantly. So I personally get it. But I'd love to hear about that process of making that transition. What mechanisms did you set in place? How did you approach going out and working on your own? This episode of Ken's Nearest Neighbors is brought to you by Z by HP. HP's high compute, workstation grade line of products and solutions. Z is specifically made for high performance data science solutions, and I personally use the ZBook Studio and the Z4 workstation. I really love that the Z line can come standard with Linux, and they also can be configured with the data science software stack. With the software stack, you can get right into the work of doing data science on day one without the overhead of having to completely reconfigure your new machine. Now back to our show.
That's a good question. I always thought that I would start a business someday, but I definitely didn't think I would quit my, high-paying job after 2 years and do it 2 years after college. It was like much earlier than I thought I would do it. So that came to a surprise to me. I was never really planning on this. It kind of just happened. I guess the way it kind of happened was I was really at Exxon. There was times where I was pretty bored. There was times where my job wasn't as challenging as I would have liked it to be. I wasn't given the chance to innovate as much as I wish I could have. I was kind of just, like I said, a cog in the machine at times. And so I think I compensated by trying to do cool things outside of work. And one of those things was freelancing. I'm like, man, they're going to pay me to do things I like. That sounds awesome. And so I started just taking on some jobs and learning new things through freelancing. I actually learned D3 through freelancing. This guy was like, hey, can you build me a D3 visualization? And I was like, well, I've never done one. So let's just do $300 and I'll do it. And I mean, anyone who's worked in D3 knows that unless you're an expert, $300 is not enough. This is like a complex interaction dashboard. But it was awesome because I was getting paid to learn, like instead of paying to learn, I was getting paid to learn. And it was a lot of fun. And I eventually, built up my clientele and also built up my personal brand a lot on LinkedIn. I went from like 800 connections to like 20,000 followers. And it got to the point where people were asking me, like, hey, I have this project. Can you do it for me? And I was like, well, I have this other project I'm doing, so I don't really have time. So I kind of had on one hand, demand for my services building up. Now, on the other hand, I was at Exxon, and this is where things might get a little controversial. And I apologize to anyone from Exxon who's watching or who disagrees with me. But I wanted to innovate. I wanted to create things. I wanted to build products. I wanted to provide value. So I built this really cool tool at Exxon, and like literally it was very, very cool. It was going to save all these engineers a bunch of time, worth millions of dollars. And like the amount of loops that I had to jump through, like, oh, this wasn't your job to build this. Oh, like this already exists. I'm like, yeah, but it sucks. And like, this is modern and this is good. Anyways, I was just getting so frustrated. And I realized I had a passion to innovate. I had a passion to create. And I just didn't see that getting fulfilled at Exxon. And so that was kind of on the other hand, what was happening. And so eventually I was like, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on myself. I guess I was 24, 25 years old. I'm young. I'm going to take a chance. I'm just going to take all these clients, take all their jobs, and we're going to go from there. We're going to quit Exxon and see how it goes. And if it goes terribly, like at least I have all the clients right now. Like I'm not quitting with nothing. Like I already have paid jobs. And if it goes terribly, I can get another job in 6 months. So that was kind of my thought process. And I made the jump.
I love that. I think something I really like to focus on is calculated risk. I mean, clearly, like, yes, you took a risk leaving a consistent job, but you had clients lined up, right? It wasn't like you were going to go broke. It wasn't like you had to start from scratch. I mean, that's something that I think is unbelievably important for other people to realize is there's a trade-off between our freedom, our happiness, how much money we make across all of these categories. And you're taking a huge leap in returns on like time freedom and your ability to pursue projects you're very interested in. And that also probably increases happiness, might increase some stress as well. And you weren't taking an unbelievable cut in your finances because you already have clients lined up. You already have these things lined up. And whenever anyone's making a decision, I think it's important to realize, hey, what can I do to provide some safety net so I'm hedging my bets just a little bit as I make this transition? So for example, I went back to school. I went back to school to get my master's in computer science, right? I'm paying out a lot of money. One of the reasons why I chose computer science over data science is that I thought that if I tried an entrepreneurial endeavor, if I really wanted to give it my best shot, if it failed, if I took computer science, I could go into computer science roles or data science roles if I really needed a job again. And that opened up a lot of doors. Obviously, I had to do the work. I built a lot of portfolio stuff. I networked my butt off. I did a lot of the things that I needed to do to hedge any of the entrepreneurial ventures that I wanted to take. So if I went down this route, I would have connections that could lead to a job. I would have a portfolio that could lead to a job, and I would have some degree certification that could also help with that networking or that job process. So the way I thought about it is anything I do from that point on, I can always fall back on being able to create an opportunity for myself in those other avenues. So that allows me to be more aggressive with entrepreneurship or with content creation or whatever it might be. Even now, fortunately, YouTube, my courses, all of these things, they have produced a revenue stream. Definitely not as well as I do as a data scientist. But if I wanted to pursue something other than data science, or I wanted to pursue something other than content, I could, because I have that other leg to stand on, and I have some flexibility that I've created for myself there. And so again, realizing that, what can I do? What would hedge me to be able to take more risk if I'm risk inclined, like I think both of us are a little bit, is a very powerful skill. And, just like you found out on, I think it was TikTok, some people don't think through your risk profile, right? They thought you were just quitting to go, do whatever in the woods, leaving this job for nothing. No, you're leaving this job, and the risk is high, but the reward, the return on your finances, your time, your freedom, your happiness, they're all almost so high they're unquantifiable.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm actually going to surprise you here. I'm actually very risk adverse. I am not a risk taker. And like in my DNA, like I am very conservative. Like I do not take risks. It's just not part of my DNA. So this was a terrifying decision for me, to leave my job. Like I owned a home. Actually, when I quit, this is kind of funny. I owned 2 homes, not on purpose really, but kind of on accident. Like I had 2 mortgages. Like I have my wife, I have a dog. Like I was terrified. It's not in my DNA to do this type of thing. But I had been thinking about it for like 6 months. So I kind of worked my way up to it. I really thought it through. On the wall, I had a piece of paper that said, these are the reasons why I'm starting my own business. So I'd be reminded every day, like you said, more time flexibility, higher pay in the long term, like follow my dream, be innovative, those types of things. And another thing that really helped me was a book called How I Built This by Guy Raz. I'm sure some people are familiar with the podcast, but I bought his book, and it's basically him talking about all the lessons he learned from interviewing all these entrepreneurs. And one thing he talks about there is it dangerous or is it scary? And he likens it to kind of like how like we're all scared of sharks, but like the odds of us dying in a shark attack versus getting in a car are like so proportionally like, but we're not scared to get in a car. And he's like the same thing with business. Sometimes he's like, we might be really scared to quit our jobs, but actually it's more dangerous to stay at a job that you're unhappy in for 20 years, the rest of your life, and you just be miserable. That's what's truly dangerous. And so his paradigm on that really like changed the way I thought. And I realized, especially because I had clients, I had a plan B. I was like, this is just scary. It's actually not that dangerous. And if worse comes to worse, like you said, I have skills, I have a portfolio, I have a personal brand that I could get not my old job at Exxon probably, but a very similar job at a different company in seconds, not seconds, in months or weeks, and it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, well, I really like that. It's, perhaps more like reframing risk. So one thing, I can't remember what book I picked it up from, but it was always essentially look at what the worst case scenario is. And if you can deal with the worst case scenario, like great, you should 100% do it.
Exactly.
And, the worst case scenario within reality, right? Like, I could, fall down the stairs and get some sort of traumatic brain injury and couldn't do any coding. But that would be like, well, there are a lot of other issues with that, right?
Yeah.
But the worst case scenario in most things is like, okay, people stop enjoying videos, or my work doesn't go that well. Those are all reconcilable. Those are all, I still have enough skills. I have enough ability to hedge on my own. And that's something people, I think, need to learn about the data science job space too, is right. Just because you didn't land your ideal data science job doesn't mean that you can't land a data science job still, or it doesn't mean that you can't land a data analyst job or a software engineering job, which is still a really good position. And you can still progress towards a data science job if that's what you really want. People also don't think past landing the job a lot of the time, right? A lot of people are so excited that they get this job at this great company, and then they're like, wow, I hate this, And so
yeah.
I think that there's a lot of value in thinking about that hedged risk, or thinking about the other options that are available to you, because a lot of the times we're basing these decisions based on very few factors, right? How much money you make, where you live, and like how difficult it is to achieve. But there's so many other factors, as you described: freedom, happiness, like your ability to learn new things, that I think, at least for me, are even more important than the finances. And I'm very happy that I was able to see some of those things in some of the past careers that I've had as well, and to move away from them. I actually did something very similar about, I guess it was almost 2 years ago. I was working I took some time off from my current company and was working as a product owner at a good company in Chicago, and I just didn't enjoy the work. And I had to, leave. I had a job to come back to, the consulting that I do. But there was still risk. There was financial risk. We were in between client cycles, so we didn't have contracts. Fortunately, like, content was starting to pick up, and I was like, what if I run with this? What if I start to focus on this and dive in? What could I possibly do? And the upside has been way more than I had ever possibly dreamed of, in terms of, meeting incredible people like yourself, like learning new things, creating a business in this space. To me, it's, if I didn't do those things, and I was that person looking over me now, if I was that alternate Ken future, I would have been pretty bummed that I didn't, make some of those decisions.
Yeah, it's so hard to see that in the moment, but you just got to think, what does future Avery, what do they look like in the future? And what it's so hard because you doubt yourself, but you could be Ken. Who knows? You just got to take a chance on yourself sometimes.
Yeah. Well, one thing I do want to ask you about a little bit more is the contracting side, and how you developed some of these contracts. I think a lot of people are looking to get into that space, or to build skills in that space. And something that you had alluded to is that, someone paid you $300 to learn, or to like build a D3JS application. And like, that's super undervaluing your skill, but you still took it and you framed it as the ability to learn. Is that something that other people can take away from? Is there a message kind of overlying that?
I think for sure. I'm a huge fan of over delivering, and maybe even providing value without being asked, and doing so for free. I kind of left this out of my story, but when I was a freshman in college, I didn't have any technical experience, zero, none. But I wanted to work in my field. I didn't want to like do fast food. I didn't want to work at the library. I wanted to like work as an engineer. And so I sent 20 cold emails to 20 professors asking if I could work in their lab. And one guy took a chance on me in the metallurgical engineering field. And so I worked for free for 3 months, part-time, for this professor. And that gave me the experience to land the job at VaporSense, which was paid, still in the lab, but I would never have gotten that job at VaporSense had it not been for working for free for 3 months. And I've seen the same thing later in my data career. I wouldn't be on this podcast probably if I didn't send you a Clubhouse invite. I wouldn't have done, started my own analytics firm if I didn't take the first jobs that paid, pretty poorly. Like I had zero freelancing experience. Like, why would anyone trust me? And so I'm a big fan of, building up your experience, of fabricating your own experience. People often are like, oh, I don't have any experience. It's like, okay, well, do a job for free. Or like I did with that D3. I didn't have any D3 experience. Why would anyone hire me for D3? Well, because I charge you $300 for it and it's cheap and I did a good job. So like, yeah. I'm a big fan of delivering, for cheap to get started, to fabricate your experience.
Yeah. I mean, on the flip side of that, you did literally get paid to learn D3 in that case, right? Yes. If you were going to learn it anyway, and you didn't have a project associated with it, like you would have done all of that work for free. And so $300 is infinitely more than you would have gotten if you did, you were going to learn it anyway, and you didn't go through that route. There is a lot of talk about, everyone should be paid for an internship or whatever that might be. But on the flip side, it's also this story about what value people can bring. A lot of the times, someone completely fresh without any work experience isn't really going to be providing much to a company, right? They might actually be detracting from the company's value, but it's good for a company to bring people in to teach them things, whatever it might be. It could be for goodwill, whatever it is. I am still a believer, and I've done it in the past, is doing some work for free. If it can help you build your resume, if it can help you tell a story. I do a lot of the projects that I create just for myself, and I'm doing that for free. If it's about a cause that I care about, why not also do that for free? I'm helping somebody. It makes me feel good. I mean, free in terms of financial assets, yes, but you're getting value of a learning experience. You're getting value of work experience and credibility, and you're building your network. And so absolutely, I think companies should pay their interns if they're creating value. But from the individual perspective, from a learner perspective, like working for someone is better than not working for someone. And you probably could quantify how much that first lab experience created for you. You might not have gotten an actual lab experience till 3 years later, like the end of your college career. And so if you put it that way, that experience was responsible for a good portion of your total future revenue. So it's
100% worth it.
Yeah. And so it's an interesting thing to think about things. Again, I guess that's the theme of this episode, of not thinking of things in dollars and cents necessarily, or trying to understand them in terms of options and futures and what opportunities these things open up for you.
One thing on that. I mean, right now I run my own analytics firm, right? But I'm at the same time, it was for my capstone project of my master's. So it had a little bit of a dual purpose, but at the same time, I spent the last summer interning for the Utah Jazz for free. I know you and I both share a love for sports, right? Like, absolutely. I love sports and I love data. And so, I tried to work for the Jazz my whole life. I'm from Utah. I love basketball. I applied like 6 times and I really never got in. And so finally this last time, with my capstone project, I pitched them on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, listen, I'm good at what I do. I'm good at data analysis. I'll work for you for free. I just want to work for the Jazz, And so I ended up doing this internship with the Jazz, and, but did I get paid? No, not at all. But can I put that on my resume now? Yeah. Like if I ever, get sick of running my own analytics firm and I want to go be, an MBA analyst or data scientist, that is so good to have on my resume. So like you said, you don't get paid in dollars and cents necessarily, but having the opportunity to put that on your resume and network is so powerful, and I got to go to 2 Jazz games, like super, super lower bowl. It was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's also something that I've really enjoyed about my own work, is working in sports, is frankly, the pay in sports is never going to rival most other domains, because there's such an interest in it. Yep. But on the flip side, the experiences you get, and, me being able to work directly with high level athletes, getting to talk to them, getting to provide value for these people, I mean, they're really incredible at their domains and their sports, but they don't necessarily have the analytical chops, the background in what I have that can create value for these people. And, I've been a part of some pretty awesome teams. I've been in some pretty cool places that probably shouldn't have been. And, like that experience, whether it's helping someone or whether it's being in the room somewhere, being able to pick the brain of someone who you look up to in a specific domain, those are also positive externalities that come out of doing some work like this. So, what I also love is that you kept trying, you knew what you wanted, you identified an organization, and you were able to get in the door in some way. And you were obviously tenacious, going back 6 times. And frankly, I would expect, since you've already shown them something, you've interned for them, the odds that you work with them again, or you work with another sports team or whatever it might be, those go up exponentially too. It's something, I say this a lot about how I view content, is that all of the stuff that I produce, like almost all of it is free, almost all of it's out there creating value. And I wouldn't have it any other way. But at the same time, all of those things are like little incremental probabilities that something in the world that I want to happen comes to me rather than me going to it.
Yes.
It's the odds that someone within a domain I'm interested in that I've talked about sees a video and they reach out to me goes up. Or if I were to reach out to that person and they've seen a video of mine and are familiar with me, that goes up as well. I mean, we're unlocking these things that, again, from like a probability perspective makes sense. But from a human perspective, it's like, oh, you're just throwing this out into the void and whatever it might be. But I just love that idea that we can like start to shape these things, or start to make the world come to us a little bit, or improve our chances of navigating whatever career or life maze that we want by doing just these little incremental things over time. And that first job, that free work that you do, in my mind, that's like a really impactful way to get started on that journey.
Yeah, 100%. And life's so much easier when people are coming to you versus you going to people. Like one thing I talk about to a lot of my students is that's what you want with jobs. You want jobs coming to you versus you going to jobs. You're so much more likely to get hired when people come to you. And so, for instance, that's one reason why I post a lot on LinkedIn. I try to post every day on LinkedIn. The amount of jobs that like I got offered just from putting out little tidbits of, my life and free content and my thoughts about data. I mean, it's crazy. Yes, every time I post, nothing happens, but eventually something happens and they come to me, and my life's so much better because they're coming to me versus me coming to them,
Yeah. I think there's some statistician could probably explain this better than I could, where it's like a probabilistic return rather than a discrete return. So like when we put something out, like, you get a hit in a baseball game, you can measure if that brought in runs, right? But like the idea of getting a hit in a baseball game doesn't generate runs in and of itself. But in a broader system, it like could generate a lot of runs if you're doing that every single time, or you're doing that consistently, or whatever it might be. Classic jumping to sports analogies.
Yeah, this is like Moneyball for life right now, right?
Exactly.
You're I like to think of it as a surface area. Like everyone needs luck in their life, and some people are like, oh, they're so lucky. And I don't see it that way. I see it as they have like expanded their surface area of net for their luck. And so like luck happens not more often, but they're just able to capitalize it because they're kind of like their surface areas everywhere.
No, I like that. So I've always described it as organized serendipity.
Yeah.
Where it's like orchestrated serendipity. So I'm putting all these things out in the world that are giving me like very incremental bits of luck, right? And the more that I have out there, the higher the odds are that something that is in line with what I want happens. And, that I think that can be applied to any domain, any part of your life. Even a stupid example like golf, right? Is if I practice and I hit the ball closer to the middle of the fairway on average, the probability that it doesn't go into the trees or the hazard goes up because I'm reining it in or something along those lines.
I love it.
And we do have control over those things, just not direct control.
No, yeah, I love it. I think that's so true.
Incredible stuff. So something I want to ask you as we kind of wind down here is what's next? What are you working on? And where can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. That's my domain. Ken has YouTube. Avery's on LinkedIn. That's where I produce most of my content. So definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. Right now, I am still working on doing my analytics firm. We take on projects. I just hired someone, so hopefully that goes well. Kind of expanding and scaling. The other thing I'm working on is kind of just through this whole experience, through breaking in kind of on my own, through jobs, and then taking a master's to kind of, I don't know, cement my place in the data world. I definitely feel like I've learned a lot about breaking into data science. And so one thing I've actually done is I've started an online course where I help people break into data science, basically talking about a lot of the stuff that we talked about today. How do I break in with projects? How do I build an online portfolio? Another aspect I really enjoy is I talked about this on LinkedIn and you actually commented, was living a data-driven life. So a lot of the projects we end up doing in the course are based on our data from our life, like our screen time or our health data, our fitness data, which is really fun. So that's launching on August 18th. And that's been a lot of my time just building videos and building out the content for the course. So it's been a lot of fun to build it.
That's incredible. I mean, something that I really reinforce, and I want to make sure I repeat this a lot, is that I think every data science project should have a stakeholder in mind, like someone you're creating this thing for. And it's totally fine if that stakeholder is yourself, right? If you're getting value out of your own sleep data or whatever it might be. I made a video, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it talks about how I track data in my own life, how I use the sleep ring to track my sleep, how I use, how I track my fitness, how I eat, how I track what I do on a given day, and how I use that to make better informed decisions about my future. To me, those things, like, it's a natural reason to collect and analyze these things, because you can make tangible improvements in the way that you live. If you can do that for yourself, what could you do for other people at scale? That blows the lid off of it, and to me, that's incredibly powerful and exciting.
Yeah, it's so fun to do data on your real life. It's just like, yeah, it's like a whole new world of adding value, because I like to say it kills 3 birds with one stone. You're learning, right? So you're learning things, you're adding stuff to your portfolio, which makes you more attractive to employers and companies. And 3, you're improving your life. So in my opinion, it's just like the best way to learn, because you're multitasking. 3 things, 3 birds, 1 stone.
I would even say like 4 or 5 stones, because in addition to that, you're working in a domain that you care about.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to be motivated to do that. I think one of the problems with a lot of projects is it's like, oh, okay, I don't really care about this housing price data set, right? Like penguins are cool, but this is kind of boring for me. And the idea that you're working, if you work on things that you care about or you're interested in, like, people don't realize how interesting they are as individuals, right? If you like anime or something, right? Why not build an anime recommendation system for yourself?
Sure.
Right? Or if you're really into golf like I am, there's so many different options for building projection models or analyzing your own game or whatever it is. Anything that you're interested in, you probably could collect data on it
100%.
and make it even more of an exciting experience for yourself. Yes. And so, like, why not, right? You get all those other benefits that you just described.
Yeah, that I totally agree. And it makes you love those things more too, and makes you like,
you're invested in them, literally.
Yeah. And you're so right that it's so easy to like get stuck and give up on your data science projects. But when you love the subject and you're excited about it, that's going to push you. It's such a good motivator.
Yeah, absolutely incredible stuff, Avery. You have any final thoughts, any last words of wisdom, causes you care about, anything like that?
No, I mean, just do projects. That's my last advice to everyone. Do a project that they care about. My dog, I don't know if you can see her. She's like, she's somewhere behind me. She has a Fitbit, and I love looking at her fitness data on her Fitbit. So like,
I love it.
Do projects and yeah, don't give up. That's another thing. And take risks. I don't know. Those are my last words of advice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Avery. I really appreciate the time today, and I'm looking forward to the next time we chat.
Yeah. Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.